Greetings, everyone. This is Virtuous Roots, where we reclaim virtue to bring it to our home and yours. And I am Thomas McCuddy, and I am riding solo tonight. That this is going to be a very special episode. So, what we're doing is we wanted to take one of our times and talk about what we're actually doing across South Africa. This is a big year for us in our ministry, and it's the kind of things that impact you as listeners, because the kinds of things we're doing on the ground are the kinds of things we're also making available across the globe. So, and I just wanted to share about some of the partner ministries and fill you in, because you might have some needs that we are meeting in some various other places. So really, the topic tonight is, what are we doing to minister to families, to churches, and what's really going on in 2026. So we have a few things that we're really excited. We'll start with some questions. So this isn't going to be just, hey, let's just inform you all that's going on. One of the key issues, and we've been talking on this podcast for several times about the biblical worldview and talking about standing firm in the culture and those kinds of things. Well, I think after spending 15 years in youth ministry, I spent 5 years in the pastorate, all full-time vocational, and so now working parachurch for the last 9 years. We watch so many of our kids fall away after high school, and this is whether they go to Christian schools. I was raised in Christian schools, and they go off to university, and we think that they just magically fall out of the faith, like something just happens. So part of what's gone on is we partner with Ratio Christi, particularly in South Africa. And what sort of opened up to us recently is ACSI, the Association of Christian Schools International, had invited one of the RC directors, Simon Brace, who's been on a podcast before. And he came and he did a talk for them, and they said, hey, would you like to come speak at the regional training in 2026? So he said, absolutely. And I've known Simon well over 20 years. So he said, well, it needs to be more than just a talk. How are we going to actually train teachers? How are we actually going to train students? Because what Simon was able to do is he identified exactly how the university deconstructs the Christian worldview. And many universities that have given over the concept of truth, many of the universities that have abandoned, they specifically strip the Christian worldview utilizing philosophy. And in the church, I say philosophy, and many people get all uptight and prickly, and it's like, well, philosophy, that's just weird stuff and weird questions. It's actually very practical, and everyone is a philosopher. You're just a good one or a bad one. But these philosophies that are in play, what happens is we send our high schoolers who graduate, we send them off to the university. We've given them some information, but we've not focused on the formation. And the information we've given them does not connect with, or otherwise stand against, what they're getting hit with in the university. So part of what Simon did, and we sat down, we looked at it, I saw how he had plotted and planned and sort of organized and can specifically show. So one of the things we don't do is we don't sit around just talk in general. Like, he has syllabi, he has documentation, and we're able to show how these ideas are specifically moving through the universities, how they're playing into the lives of the students. And so that's why we began writing a curriculum, a worldview curriculum. We're calling it the Worldview Wanderer. And the whole point is because our worldviews in the schools have wandered away from the truth, and we show how. We show specifically how this happens. And we've written it and are writing it in such a way, with such help, so that we want this to be available not just for the trained educator in the Christian school, but every homeschool family, every mom and dad who has their kids in the public schools, that this is the kind of thing that you could do as a study with your children, because our whole goal is to stop what I watched for 15 years as I trained my students in apologetics, how to defend the faith. As a youth pastor, I trained my students how to study the Bible. And they go off into the university and they lack the philosophical foundation in order to engage the ideas, and they lack virtue. And these two things, the heart and the mind, really, we've left them exposed with our children. And so we've, as of this last weekend, we've done 2 conferences in South Africa. I believe there to be 7 more that we're doing. I'll be able to speak at one. I'm actually going to be at one down in the Eastern Cape around the end of July, beginning of August. And there's a couple that Thomas Quackenbush as well. He's going to be able. So we're actually coming in mid-year to speak at these conferences, to connect with schools. And we don't want people who are listening to think, well, my kids don't go to Christian school. This is not for me. This is for all parents. Our goal is not to sell curriculum. Like that's not what this ministry is. If you've been listening to this podcast, that's not our heart. If this is your first time listening, you're like, who is this Yahoo? Go listen to our past episodes. Go listen, and there's a deep concern for the church, a deep concern for helping families, for discipleship. And that's what this is. And our goal is to train teachers, to train parents, to reach our children. And at one of the conferences recently, there was one of the teachers who was there actually afterwards gave a word of testimony that she had taken that journey. She had wandered away, that her story was exactly the story that we present, where you go into college, your foundation is stripped, you're deconstructed, that all your ideas, your values are replaced. It happened to her. And she testifies, she's like, this was me. And basically my understanding is she's, by God's grace, she was able to come back to the truth. So this is a story told many, many times for decades now, many decades. This has been going on. So what are we really going to do in order to stop this? Part of our mission here with Families of Virtue, and part of what we've been doing, is helping parents. Here's how you can form your children into the image of Christ. But there is also information that needs to take place. And that's what the Worldview Wanderer is. And we're doing this for the sole purpose of how can we stop losing our children after high school. It's not that youth ministry is insufficient in and of itself. Youth ministry serves a purpose, but it is insufficient all by itself. And I think that's what happens. We have youth ministry. Maybe the kids go to Christian school, but that's a small number of the kids who are going. And then we send them to university and we hope for the best. And we just need to be much more prudent. We need to be much more strategic. And so if you'd like to find out more about this, the website is worldviewwanderer.com. And that is where our sample curriculum is. It gives the vision, gives the heart of what we're trying to do. And if you're thinking, I don't have kids, or they're older and, this doesn't apply, it actually does, because the whole point is to ground in the Christian worldview. That's where we spend the first couple of units just doing that. What is this idea of theism and the nature of God and his attributes? What are the essential doctrines of the faith? We spend a large portion on the front end building that foundation. And then we spend about 3 units demonstrating and showing how the worldviews diverge and how this happens and what's going on. And it's not just an entire buffet of ideas. It's targeted. We're able to show step by step how this takes place. We have graphics that illustrate this. And what we're trying to do is show this is the world we live in. this is the marketplace of ideas, the major ones that are that we're having to engage with. And particularly with South Africa, in terms of the worldviews, we examine particularly the African worldviews and some of the ideas that are particular to the continent of Africa, because we're trying to help the church first in Africa. And then within the States, we were able to take and shift for some of those ideas that are more particular for the States. And this is why having our Families of Virtue team that is in Africa, we have 2 team members in Africa, and we also partner with several ministries there. So we're able to come at this with precision and accuracy. And as you look and you understand how things have moved away, we spend the last couple of units, how do we engage? How do we become the kinds of disciples that we need to be in order to engage? And again, wrapping it up with this call forward and what to do. So we've done this for the purpose of helping families. I know when you hear curriculum, you're like, well, that's a school. Yeah, but what's made of schools? The schools have students and they have kids, particularly the Christian high schools, Christian elementary schools. We've been trying to write material for parents with young ones. It's never too early to ground them in the truth. And we're doing this, again, as an act of love, because our ministry, what excites us is not the development of material and curriculum. What excites us is discipleship, mentoring. And for all those that listen and hear, and you're almost like sitting back and, and listening in and watching third party in some ways, this is my chance to speak to you directly. And this is why we decided to do, one of the reasons to do an episode like this is because if you're the kind of person who says, man, I really wish I could have some help, I really wish someone would guide me, that's why we exist. That's why we're doing what we're doing. This is why when we're doing this with our podcast, it's not because we're bored, not because we need things to keep us busy. It's because there's a lot of people out there who are probably like me. When I first came to the faith, I did not have very many people to help me. I had a few scattered examples. I had some people I sort of watched from afar and tried to figure out, but I had no one to take my hand and say, walk this way. Here's how you do this. And I desperately wanted it. I sought it out and couldn't find it. It wasn't until college that, and actually my college experience, I walked into a math degree where all my friends were Muslims, atheists, and Hindus. But I went into college already dating a lady who would be my wife eventually. And her family, her network was my sanctuary. And it was there that I had this group of people locally who were able to help me. They were there for me, but I really wanted to grow in my faith. So they kept me safe, but I was always, I remember asking people, can you help me? Can you, I want to grow, and no one knew how. And so we want to find people like that. We're looking for people who want to grow. And if the whole idea of, I'd like to understand the worldviews, I'd like to understand the world I live in, I want to know when I'm on social media and I see these memes and I see these terms and people, I keep hearing some of these same things. This is why, again, in our ministry, the training that I and Thomas Quackenbush, Nick, and the rest of our team, the kind of training that we have is designed to help people. If you've got questions you want to know, that's what we want to do. So that's one side from the schools. The other side that we're really excited about, 2026, how are we going to really help families? We came to South Africa in, I think it was it would have been 2021 or 22. I can't remember. But it was one of those years we came in and it was Father's Day. And I remember we got to preach at a church on Father's Day, and we were doing a family conference. And one of the major issues facing Africa is fatherless homes. And America is not far behind. And this is an epidemic we're seeing across the world. So, again, we recognize it. So, what are we going to do about it? Well, there's a ministry in South Africa, and we've had Camp David on our program before. Yaku is the one who I interviewed one time, and we had a great conversation about this ministry, Camp David. It's been around over 20 years. They have seen men radically changed. And the whole goal of Camp David, in many ways, if we want to describe it as a boot camp for men, to teach them how to be biblical men. We live in a world where, again, we don't know what men and women are. The culture doesn't. The Bible does. And how do we make that connection? How do we actually teach men to be men? Because if you have a man who's not been fulfilling his role or being a man, you need other men to come along. You need a brotherhood. And Camp David has done this superbly. And when we got connected with them, the first thing we said is, what can we do to help? So as our ministry, it's like, how can we get involved? What do you need? So again, this is why you as a listener, I tell you, this is what we say. This is what we do. Camp David said, we need some material. I said, we can do that. And they said, well, you have to come actually participate in the camp in order to write material. You can't be leadership unless you've done the camp. I said, amazing. This is an amazing rule. Love it. So that's why it was actually about this time last year. I think it was coming back right about this time last year that we went and we did Camp David. Nick and myself, another local pastor, we went and experienced this. And my whole goal was, we're going to help this ministry. So when we did it, I said, I needed this. This was amazing. This helped me in terms of being a father, being a brother in Christ, being a husband. This one weekend, I said, these guys have honed this and are expert practitioners at this. And so the question we began asking is, how can we bring this to the United States? Because the states need this really bad. And part of what we're doing is we're looking at it, and now it looks like it's going to be 2027, about a year from now. We're going to be bringing and trying to establish Camp David USA. And I bring this up because for those who are in South Africa, the reason this is relevant is because Camp David has been on your home soil for quite some time. Camp David is there, and these men are there. And there is, I cannot think of in my almost now 30 years that I'm loath to admit this, but in 30 years since I've been in some sort of formal ministry, I've never encountered a group that does this kind of thing better. The kind of discipleship that happens on a weekend. This is the kind of thing where if you're a family, and again, as a man and you're struggling, or maybe you're a wife and you know what? Maybe your husband's like me. Maybe your husband never had a godly example of what a good man is, a biblical man. Never had an example of a biblical marriage. I suffered that. I did not have that. When I was married, my wife, she was 19, I was 20. We were still kids, and I had not a clue. And we struggled badly. And part of what we try to do is, if for those who are struggling, we want to be there for them. We want to help them. The struggle is worth it, but you don't have to struggle alone. And so many people, they feel, that they wouldn't respond to me, can't get through, those kinds of things. We have always in our ministry put our emails right up front, the phone numbers to our ministry. Those are, I mean, they're mostly my numbers. So that's why, and I say that because when people contact, you're not getting a secretary, you're not getting someone, you're not having to go through a system. We want to reach people. We want to see families changed. Camp David is doing that with men. There needs to be some version for women. I do not know of one, but I do know South Africa has some amazing things going on this year. And as a ministry, we're getting to participate in this. We're getting to go and support schools, teachers, moms, dad, to take men and help them grow as the men that they've been called to be. That it's not just about this generic image of Christ. There is that image that we're all supposed to put on, but there is an image also for man, and there is one for woman, that God has called us to these roles. And so many of us have lacked the support. So Families of Virtue exists, again, to be that support, where we're trying to find those ways. And honestly, one of the reasons why we keep going to South Africa every year. Right now, we're flying out July 10th. Tickets have been booked. We're flying out July 10th. I'll be in South Africa for at least a month. And our whole purpose of going is that we have sensed the hunger that's there. We've sensed the need. And we've also had some of our best response that people have said, will you walk beside us? And we've said yes. And people have asked, can you help me? And we said yes. And so this year, as we're looking and you hear about some of these things and it seems, oh, well, it's so grand, we're speaking from a stage. That is just a means to an end. You've heard us many times talk about seeking the good, the true, the good, and the beautiful. And the true good for us is making disciple makers. The true good for us is watching men and women grow in their own personal virtue, that they become more like Christ. Our true good is found in those lives changed, in people helped, in families strengthened. That is everything. That is our priority one. So in this special episode, what I hope you take away, if you're listening, if you're one of those who's out there, and again, normally you're just listening to us chat. So this is me calling out to you right now, listener. If you're one of those who says, I just don't know who to turn to. I just don't know who to call. I just don't know. I got nobody. I remember being there. I was one of those. That's why I believe God has pressed it upon my heart so fervently, that when I see somebody who has that need, when I find someone in that situation, my heart goes out and I will respond, because that's what God has called us to do. So you can find us at Virtuous Roots on all streaming platforms. You can also look us up, familiesofvirtue.com. And again, if you're interested in learning more about the curriculum, the worldviewwanderer.com, you can go there. But we also are reigniting our Classical Virtue Academy this in the next few months. We're going to be offering some discipleship. We're going to be offering some training. And we have done this with people all over the world. So the classicalvirtueacademy.com, you can go there as well. And again, when you look, we're a ministry. When you look, we're based in the U.S., so you're going to see U.S. prices. Remember, we understand the South African economy, so we match it. So always ask, because we want to serve. We want to minister. It's why we're here. So thank you for listening to this special episode, and we'll return next week with a regular episode and crew in studio. Thank you. God bless.